It was 3 a.m. when my best friend sent me the photo, her in bed with my husband. The message read, "Sorry your husband prefers a woman of means. Divorce him quietly." I replied, "Enjoy what's left of his fortune." The next morning, their credit cards were blocked and the police were knocking on their hotel room door. Tonight was supposed to be the most important night of our lives, or at least for my husband and the hundreds of employees who worked under him. It was the 5th anniversary for the tech startup he led. I stood frozen before the vanity mirror, staring intently at my own reflection. My hand slowly straightened the collar of the simple cream-colored dress I was wearing. It was utterly plain, a long-sleeved sheath dress that did nothing to accentuate my figure. There were no glittering sequins, no luxurious lace. Even its price tag was insignificant compared to the bespoke suit that clung to my husband's frame tonight. My makeup was as minimal as possible, just enough color on my lips to keep me from looking ill. My long hair was simply tied back in a ponytail with a plain clip. My appearance tonight perfectly mirrored the persona I had cultivated, a simple, unassuming housewife who knew nothing of the glittering world of high-stakes business. The bedroom door opened. My husband David walked in, adjusting his tie. He looked incredibly handsome tonight. The expensive, custom-tailored suit he'd commissioned from a renowned designer fit him perfectly, radiating the aura of a young, successful, and brilliant CEO. His eyes glanced at me through the mirror's reflection, and I could see a flicker of dissatisfaction cross his face, though he tried to hide it quickly. He let out a short sigh before approaching and standing behind me. "Are you sure you want to wear that tonight?" he asked, his tone a gentle reprimand. "This is a huge celebration. We'll have major investors, city officials, and all our business partners there. Don't you have a more appropriate gown? Or at least put on the jewelry I bought you last month so you don't look so plain." I turned to give him the soft smile I had practiced for years, the smile of a dutiful, obedient wife. "I feel comfortable in this," I answered softly. "Besides, you're the star tonight, not me. I don't want my appearance to be a distraction. Let everyone see how brilliant my husband is when he stands on that stage. I just want to be there quietly supporting you." David seemed slightly flattered by my words. Though a hint of doubt remained on his face, he patted my shoulder gently. "All right then, just as long as you know how to act later. Don't say too much if any journalists ask you technical questions about the company. Just smile and direct them to me or our PR manager." "Of course," I replied, nodding obediently. We left for the 5-star hotel, where the event was being held, in a luxury sedan with a private driver. Throughout the drive, David was glued to his phone, replying to texts or calling business associates. He was busy curating his image, ensuring everything would go off without a hitch. I just stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. Inside, I smiled cynically. He truly relished his role. Upon arriving at the hotel ballroom, the atmosphere was already electric. A massive crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting a golden glow that reflected off the guests' wine glasses. The soft melody of a string quartet filled the air, lending an air of elegance to the party. The moment we stepped inside, all eyes turned to us, or more accurately, to my husband. People flocked to shake his hand, offering congratulations and praising his company's meteoric rise over the past 5 years. The app his company had launched had successfully changed the lifestyles of millions, and his company was now valued in the billions. While David was busy being the center of attention, I chose to take a few steps back. I stood in a less conspicuous corner, holding a glass of warm water because I disliked alcohol. A few of the wives of David's business partners greeted me, but our conversations were always awkward. They were adorned in gowns from international designers, diamond jewelry that blinded the eye, and carried designer bags that could buy a small car. They looked at me with a pity disguised by polite smiles. I knew exactly what they were thinking. How could such a brilliant CEO have such a frumpy and boring wife? I let them have their thoughts. Let them feel superior. Suddenly, the attention of the room shifted as the main ballroom doors opened again. A woman strode in with utter confidence, as if the entire room were her personal runway. It was my best friend Jessica, a friend I had known since we were in college. She wore a stunning fire engine red dress that clung to her curves perfectly with a dangerously high slit up the leg. Diamonds sparkled at her neck and ears. Her high heels clicked sharply on the marble floor. She was the very definition of a high society socialite who lived from one party to the next. She spotted me immediately in my corner and walked over with a wide, forced smile. The overpowering scent of her perfume assaulted my nostrils. "Oh my God, you actually came looking like that," was her first sentence after we exchanged perfunctory air kisses. Her eyes scanned my appearance from head to toe with undisguised condescension. "This is your husband's company anniversary gala, not a PTA meeting at the community center. Look at this dress. It looks like it's never seen an iron. Didn't your husband just close a multi-million-dollar funding round last month? Why is he being so cheap as to not buy you a decent gown?" I just smiled faintly, suppressing every emotion from showing on my face. "This dress is comfortable," I said simply. Jessica snorted, rolling her eyes. "Comfort won't save your husband's reputation in front of his investors. You should learn to take care of yourself. Your husband is an important man now, rich, handsome, and at the peak of his career. There are countless women out there who would do anything to be in your position. If you keep looking like the help, don't blame anyone if his eyes start to wander." Her words were intentionally spoken loud enough for several people nearby to hear. I saw a few other women smirk, trying to hold back their laughter. I bowed my head, pretending to be sad and hurt by her remarks. My mother always said that simplicity is the key to a peaceful home. "I don't need luxury," I replied softly, playing my role as a weak woman. "Poor naive thing," she muttered cynically. After she was satisfied with belittling me, Jessica turned and walked straight towards the crowd where my husband was standing. I watched her from a distance. As soon as she reached David, her demeanor changed 180 degrees. She laughed melodically, touching his arm intimately, as they spoke, leaning forward just enough for him to get a view of her cleavage. David didn't pull away at all. On the contrary, his face lit up. He returned her laughter in a few times. He even placed a hand on her waist under the guise of maintaining balance in the crowd. They looked so perfectly matched, the handsome, successful man and the captivating socialite. The sight didn't make me jealous, not at all. My heart was already numb. I just observed them with a cold gaze, noting every interaction, every meaningful glance, every shared smile. Other guests began to whisper. Some glanced in my direction with even deeper pity, assuming I was oblivious to the affair happening right under my nose. I let them all get lost in this drama. The evening concluded with an extraordinary speech from my husband. He stood on stage accepting thunderous applause and spoke of innovation, hard work, and the future vision of his company. He occasionally glanced towards Jessica, who stood in the front row smiling proudly. He never once mentioned my name in his speech. To him, I was just an insignificant part of the background. Near midnight, we finally went home. David looked exhausted but satisfied. He collapsed onto the bed the moment we got home and was fast asleep within minutes without even changing his clothes. I stood at the bedroom doorway, making sure his breathing was steady. Once I was sure he was deeply asleep, I turned and walked towards my study, located at the end of the second-floor hallway. That study was my domain. David almost never entered it, assuming it was just where I kept my cookbook, sewing kit, and gardening tools. I locked the door from the inside. The atmosphere shifted to complete silence. I slid a large bookshelf that in fact had hidden wheels revealing a small steel door equipped with a fingerprint and retinal scanner. Once the steel door opened, I stepped into a secret room that no one, not even my husband, knew existed. The room was cold, filled with rows of blinking servers and 3 massive curved screen monitors on a modern workstation. I sat in my leather chair, turned on the computer, and entered a series of complex passwords. Within seconds, the screens lit up, displaying thousands of lines of code, financial graphs, and the company's organizational structure. David could give speeches on stage, accept accolades, and feel like the king of the world. But in this room, the truth resided. 5 years ago, I was the one who wrote every single line of the application's core code. I was the one who designed its artificial intelligence algorithm. I was the one who built the entire business framework from scratch. However, Due to a traumatic past with publicity and my deep aversion to the media spotlight, I decided to never be the face of the company. I chose my husband, who was then just an ordinary employee with good communication skills, to be that face. I established several shell corporations overseas to funnel funding and control the shares through a complex and confidential legal structure. I was the holder of 90% of the company's stock. My husband, he was just a puppet I appointed as CEO, with phantom stocks I could revoke at any time. He was an employee I paid to smile for the cameras while I controlled everything from the shadows. This mask of a simple, foolish wife was my best protection. And seeing his behavior tonight with my best friend, I think it's time I start reevaluating my employee's position. I smiled coldly in the dimly lit room. The real game had just begun. That morning felt different. The sun had just peeked through the bedroom curtains, but David was already awake and bustling in front of the wardrobe. Usually after a tiring party, he would sleep until noon, but this time he looked incredibly energetic, packing a few casual shirts, shorts, and toiletries into a small suitcase. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my pajamas, watching him with a flat expression. "Where are you going so early?" I asked with an innocent tone, deliberately probing. David glanced over, a slightly forced smile on his face. Sorry, I didn't tell you last night. I have a sudden business trip overseas to Europe. Some major investors there were impressed with my presentation last night and want to have a private meeting immediately. This is a huge opportunity for our company's expansion." He answered smoothly, as if he had rehearsed the excuse all night. I nodded slowly, feigning belief. "How long will you be there? Do you need me to help you pack?" I asked, getting up from the bed and approaching him. No need. I'm all done. Maybe about a week. You just stay home, okay? Take care of yourself. If you need any spending money, just use the usual credit card," he said, hastily zipping up the suitcase. He then gave me a quick kiss on the forehead, a kiss that felt cold and empty before rushing out of the room with his luggage. "I have to get to the airport now. My flight leaves in 2 hours. Bye." I stood silently in the room, listening to his footsteps fade away, followed by the sound of the front door closing and the car engine slowly disappearing. Once the house was quiet again, the innocent smile on my face vanished, replaced by a sharp, cold expression. "A business trip to Europe," I muttered cynically. Without wasting time, I started cleaning up the small mess he had left in the room. As I tidied the nightstand beside his bed, my eyes fell on his old work tablet, which he had deliberately left behind since he was bringing his new laptop. David was indeed careless. He might be a good public speaker, but he was terrible when it came to digital security. He always used the same password for all his devices, his birth date combined with mine. How ironic! I unlocked the tablet. I wasn't planning to look for cheap evidence of an affair, but something on the home screen caught my attention. His personal email app was still open. The top message was a booking confirmation from a luxury travel agency. I clicked on it. Displayed in crystal-clear detail were 2 first-class flight tickets to Europe and a reservation for a luxury suite at a 5-star hotel for 7 nights. The first passenger's name was my husband. The second was my best friend. I stared at the tablet screen for a long time. Did I cry? No, not a single tear fell. Did my chest tighten with heartbreak? Maybe a little. There was a slight pang of pain, remembering that I had spent years of my life building this man from nothing, only to be repaid with a cheap betrayal with my own best friend. However, that sadness was overwhelmingly defeated by a sense of disgust and the desire to destroy them. This proof was enough. His business trip alibi was just a cover for a vacation to squander money with the woman who had belittled me last night, but something was nagging at me. A luxury trip to Europe, first-class flights, 5-star hotels, would cost an enormous amount of money, well into the tens of thousands of dollars. David was a CEO with a large salary, but I knew his lifestyle had already stretched his personal finances thin. Where did he get that much money for a sudden vacation? My instincts as the architect behind this company began to fire up. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about my company's money. I placed the tablet back where it was, as if it had never been touched, and walked quickly to my secret office. I locked the steel door, sat in front of the 3 large monitors, and began typing rapidly. This time, I didn't just access the operational system. I broke into the company's internal financial servers, which had the highest level of security. I opened the general ledger, bank transaction records, and confidential financial reports that were never disclosed in regular board meetings. David thought that because he held the CEO title, he had full control over the finances without any oversight. He forgot who built this monitoring system. In less than 15 minutes, my eyes widened at the rows of red figures displayed on the screen. My chest rumbled, not with sadness, but with a surging anger mixed with disbelief at the man's foolishness. These financial reports were a disaster, completely in shambles. I traced one suspicious transaction after another from the last 6 months. David, using his authority as CEO, had secretly liquidated a fantastical amount of the company's cash reserves. For what I opened the investment attachment folder, it turned out he had illegally invested company funds into several bogus cryptocurrency projects and fictitious real estate ventures with no clear legal basis. He did all of this without shareholder approval, which meant my approval, and without any proper risk analysis. He was purely duped by promises of quick and easy profits. Even worse, when those bogus investments crashed and he lost the company's money, he tried to cover it up. How he borrowed money, not from a legitimate bank, but from a high-end loan shark consortium and some shadow investors with absurdly high interest rates. And what made me smile cynically amidst my anger was that because our company was a startup with a specific capital structure, those illegal lenders required David to sign the loan agreements as a personal guarantor. This meant he used his position to incur debt, falsified the company's cash reports, embezzled official investor funds, and bore all the risk of this massive debt in his own name with his original signature on the legal documents. He had left a massive trail of financial crime and administrative stupidity. I leaned back in my leather chair, took a long, deep breath, and exhaled slowly. My eyes were still glued to the screen displaying the evidence of his embezzlement. Right now, my husband was flying first-class toasting champagne with my best friend, feeling like an untouchable king of the world, a rich man who had successfully deceived his foolish wife at home. He had no idea that he had just dug his own grave, climbed into it, and handed me the shovel. This financial crisis was a disaster for my company. Yes, but in the right hands, this disaster was a weapon of mass destruction. I would not cry over this affair. Crying is what victims do, and I am not a victim. I am the architect. This betrayal gave me a perfectly valid and legal reason to get rid of this parasite forever. If my best friend wanted my husband because she thought he was rich, then I would give him to her completely, without a single cent left to his name. With my fingers flying across the keyboard, I began copying all the documents, transfer proofs, debt signatures, and bogus investment histories to my private encrypted server. I created a digital trail that no one could erase, ensuring that all evidence led directly to my husband's neck without a single loophole. After all the data was secure, I turned off the monitors and walked out of the secret room. I picked up my phone and dialed a secret number I only used in emergencies. The call was answered on the second ring. "Hello, Mr. Harrison?" I greeted my voice calm but cold, addressing my most loyal personal attorney. "We have a big problem, or rather, my husband has a big problem. We need to meet right now. Bring all the legal documents for our shell corporations. It's time for a cleanup." "C'est bon, tons." I hung up, walked to the large window in the living room, and looked out. The sky outside was bright and clear as the plan for my revenge, which was beginning to form perfectly in my head. That afternoon the sun beat down, but the air inside the car taking me downtown felt ice cold. I sat upright in the back seat, staring at the dense city traffic through the tinted windows. My destination wasn't a shopping mall or a beauty salon like the typical routine of other CEOs' wives. My destination was a private law firm on the top floor of an elite office building where my trusted lawyer worked. This lawyer wasn't a standard corporate attorney. He was my personal legal counsel who had been with me long before my company became a market leader, long before my husband wore his first expensive suit. Upon arriving at the building's lobby, I used a special VIP access route to avoid the main security cameras and any business acquaintances who might recognize me as the CEO's wife. The elevator doors opened directly into a luxurious private waiting room. My lawyer's assistant was already waiting with a polite smile and led me straight to the main office. Behind a large mahogany desk, my lawyer stood to greet me. He was a middle-aged man with a sharp gaze that could always read a situation quickly. We dispensed with the small talk. I immediately sat in the leather chair opposite him, took an encrypted flash drive from my handbag, and placed it squarely in the middle of the desk. "I need you to execute our emergency plan. Today," I stated, my voice devoid of any hesitation, as cold as ice. My lawyer glanced at the flash drive, then at my face. He knew me inside and out, knew how I operated. He knew I never made impulsive decisions. He picked up the small device, connected it to his multi-layered security computer, and entered a password that only the two of us knew. "What has your husband done this time?" he asked as his eyes began scanning the monitor. "He's dug his own grave, and this time he used my company's golden shovel to do it," I replied flatly. "Please see for yourself, the documents in the red folder." He liquidated the company's main cash reserves. He poured the money into fictitious real estate projects and shady cryptocurrency schemes. He did it all on his own authority as an executive board member without shareholder approval. The room was silent for several minutes, filled only with the sound of mouse clicks, as my lawyer opened document after document, verifying every digital signature and bank transfer I'd hacked from the internal server this morning. The longer he read, the deeper the furrows on his brow became. He was a man who had seen plenty of white-collar crime, but the level of my husband's stupidity this time clearly astounded him. "This is incredibly reckless," my lawyer murmured, shaking his head slowly. "He didn't just embezzle legitimate investor funds, but he also falsified the last quarterly report to cover the hole in the cash flow. And crazier still, he borrowed fresh capital from a consortium of private lenders not registered with the financial authorities. The interest on this loan is suffocating. How could he possibly think this was a good idea?" "Because his arrogance has blinded his common sense," I replied calmly. "He thinks he's a genius after being constantly praised by the media and surrounded by women like my best friend who continuously inflate his ego. He thought he could secretly multiply the money and become a savior, but he forgot. He's not a real businessman. He's just an actor I paid to read a script." My lawyer looked at me meaningfully. "And you found the personal guarantee clause in his loan?" I nodded slowly, a cynical smile finally forming at the corner of my lips. "Yes, because our startup doesn't have enough physical assets to secure a loan of that magnitude. Those lenders in suits demanded a personal guarantee. My husband, with great confidence, signed the agreement in his own name. He made himself the absolute guarantor for all losses and defaults on that debt." My lawyer leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. His eyes glinted as he realized how perfect this trap was. "So what are your instructions for me now?" "Savor everything," I commanded, my voice echoing softly in the soundproof room. "You remember the corporate structure we created 5 years ago. The company my husband leads is merely an operational entity. All intellectual property rights, the application source code, technology patents, and the real net assets are held by the parent shell corporation, of which I own 100% of the shares." "Of course I remember. I drafted it," he replied. "In your husband's CEO contract for the operational entity, there's a gross misconduct clause. If he is proven to have committed fraud, embezzlement, or any act that endangers the business's continuity, the parent entity has the absolute right to unilaterally and immediately revoke all licenses and intellectual assets." "Precisely," I countered. "I want you to activate that clause today, right now. Transfer all remaining legitimate cash reserves, all patents, and all client data servers to the new entity we've prepared. Leave that operational company completely empty. Revoke all of my husband's access rights from the main system." My lawyer began typing quickly. "If I do this, the company your husband leads will become an empty shell carrying a mountain of massive debt. The illegal creditors and legitimate investors will immediately hunt him down personally because he is the guarantor. He will face civil lawsuits for bankruptcy and multiple criminal charges for fraud." "That is exactly the point," I said coldly. "Let him bear the consequences of his own signature. He borrowed it, he embezzled it, he should be the one to go to prison. I will not let my years of hard work and sweat be destroyed by the foolishness of an ungrateful man. Make sure my name and the name of my parent company are clean without a single stain. Make it appear as though his operational entity violated its licensing agreement with us. This process requires your physical signature to validate the license revocation. I'll prepare the documents now," my lawyer said, standing up and walking towards a special printer in the corner of the room. While waiting for the printer to spit out the pages that would become the death warrant for my husband's career, I remembered a text from my mother-in-law a few months ago. She had called to tell me to pay more attention to my appearance so my husband wouldn't be embarrassed to bring me to important events. My mother-in-law always thought her son's success was due to his own greatness, and I was just a lucky parasite who managed to marry him. Now that thought made me want to laugh out loud. We'll see if she can still boast about her precious son when he becomes a wanted fugitive. A few minutes later, a thick stack of documents was placed before me. My lawyer handed me an elegant black ink pen. I skimmed the key points. Everything was written in impenetrable legal language, securing my position 100% and throwing my husband into a bottomless abyss of financial ruin. Without a shred of hesitation, I affixed my signature to every marked page. The stroke of the ink felt incredibly liberating. Each signature was a chain I broke. Each signature was a queen's slow move on a chessboard cornering the false king until he had nowhere to run. "Done," I said, placing the pen down with a satisfying click. "When does this take legal effect?" "Now," my lawyer answered, gathering the documents and stamping them with a notary seal. "The banking system will process the transfer of the remaining cash to your new entity's account in less than an hour. Simultaneously, your husband's access to the old company accounts will be immediately frozen by the system due to the license revocation anomaly. As of this moment, he is officially the head of a dead company with tens of millions in debt that he must bear himself." I smiled satisfied. "Good work. Make sure you are unreachable by my husband's side starting tomorrow morning. A storm is coming, and I want him to face it without a single life raft to grab onto." I walked out of that law firm feeling as light as a feather. The evening breeze brushed against my face as I got back into the car. There was no more secret burden, no more pity. I had saved my kingdom, and now all I had to do was sit back and enjoy the show of their downfall. Night had fallen over the city by the time I arrived home. This luxurious two-story house felt incredibly quiet. Usually this loneliness choked me, reminding me of the long hours I spent alone, while my husband claimed to be working late at the office, which I now knew was time spent with another woman. But tonight, the silence felt like beautiful music. The house felt spacious, airy, as if a foul stench had finally been sucked out of every room. I walked to the kitchen with no intention of cooking dinner for anyone. I opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of red wine that I had never touched. David often bought expensive wines for his collection, and I always refused to drink them, preferring warm tea. But to celebrate this silent victory tonight, I figured a glass or two wouldn't hurt. I poured the deep red wine into a crystal glass, taking it and a piece of cheese to my bedroom balcony on the second floor. The night wind blew gently, carrying the scent of distant rain. I sat in a rattan chair, put my feet up, and gazed at the glittering city lights stretching out before me. My mind drifted back in time. 5 years ago, when David was a man who had nothing, we lived in a small, rented house. He would often cry in frustration because his job applications were rejected time and time again. I was the one who sat before him, held his hand, and told him that we would build something of our own. I was the one who typed code day, and until my eyes were red, creating our first application while he was only tasked with making coffee. I gave him everything, even handing over the main stage to him so he could feel worthy as a man. I allowed myself to stay in the background, fading into the image of a simple wife so he could shine. And how did he repay me? He betrayed me with my own best friend. My best friend. Thinking about her made me snort with a mixture of amusement and disgust. She was the type of woman who measured a person's worth by the brand of handbag they carried. Since college, she had always seen me as competition, even though I never engaged. When she found out I had married an ordinary unemployed man, she laughed at me. But when David suddenly became successful and our company was valued in the billions, she was the first one to cling to him like a leech. She would often visit this house pretending to be a caring friend, while her eyes constantly appraised the value of every piece of furniture in the living room. She would make passive-aggressive comments about my appearance, telling me to take care of myself, saying that an unattractive wife would soon be abandoned. It turned out she wasn't just talking. She was on her own mission to prove that she was more deserving of being with the successful CEO. I sipped my wine slowly. It tasted bitter, yet a warmth spread through my chest. I glanced at the clock on the bedroom wall through the glass balcony door. 10 p.m. Right now, on the other side of the world, David and Jessica must have just arrived at their luxurious hotel. They must be enjoying the special treatment, laughing at my foolishness for being left alone at home while they planned their romantic getaway. Time crawled on. Midnight passed. 1 a.m., 2 a.m. I was still awake, sitting on the balcony with the last of the wine in my glass. For some reason, I couldn't sleep. My gut told me something was going to happen tonight. Something that would be the climax of this disgusting charade. My premonition was correct. At exactly 3 a.m., the screen of my phone lying on the small table suddenly lit up. Its vibration shattered the night's silence. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before slowly reaching for it. A message had come in from Jessica's number, not just a text, but a picture message. I swiped the screen to unlock the phone, and my eyes were immediately presented with a sight that was supposed to shatter any woman's heart. It was a photo taken from Jessica's perspective. In it, she was lying on a king-sized bed with messy white silk sheets, clearly in a high-end hotel room. Jessica was smiling triumphantly at the camera, her hair slightly disheveled. Her body was covered only by a thin blanket up to her chest. And next to her, sleeping soundly with his back to the camera and his torso bare, was my husband. On the nightstand beside the bed were 2 empty champagne glasses and a bottle of liquor, whose price was likely equivalent to a manager's monthly salary. The photo was clear, explicit. There was no room for denial. This was a declaration of war from a woman who felt she had won everything. I scrolled down to read the text that accompanied the photo. Jessica no longer bothered with her mask of friendship. The text was blunt, piercing, and full of disgusting arrogance. "Sorry your husband prefers a woman of means. Divorce him quietly." I read that sentence over and over. Every word was steeped in the poison of arrogance. She truly thought her wealth, or at least her appearance of wealth, had successfully snatched a prized man from my hands. She felt she had crushed my self-worth to its lowest point. She had deliberately sent this message at 3 a.m., a time when a wife alone at home is at her most emotionally vulnerable, hoping I would break down in hysterics, call her repeatedly, and beg for forgiveness, but not a single muscle in my face tensed with sadness. Instead of crying, a low laugh escaped my lips, a laugh so cold it echoed on the quiet balcony. My laughter grew louder until my shoulders shook. My God, how foolish and naive this woman was. She thought she had just won the lottery when in fact she had just picked up a ticking time bomb. She had stolen my husband because she thought he was rich. The man currently sleeping soundly beside her was a man with a mountain of illegal debt, its interest compounding every second. That man no longer had a job, no longer had a company, and by tomorrow morning he wouldn't even have access to buy a cup of coffee. I put down my wine glass. My fingers hovered over the virtual keyboard on my phone screen. I didn't need to write a long paragraph to curse, cry, or threaten. I only needed one short sentence to show that I was not the weak woman she imagined. One sentence that would ring in her head when the real storm hit them a few hours from now. With a cynical smile still on my lips, I slowly typed my reply. "Enjoy what's left of his fortune." I pressed send. The blue check marks appeared instantly, indicating she had read it immediately. She was probably staring at her phone, waiting for my hysterical reaction. I could imagine the confused frown on her face as she read my cold reply. Before she could type any response, before she could hurl her next insult, I went to her contact settings and selected block this number. The phone screen went dark. The connection to the poison of my past was completely severed. I stood up from the chair, stretching my arms under the night sky. The air had never felt so fresh. The heavy burden I had carried for so long to maintain the image of a perfect family had been lifted from my shoulders. I walked back into the room, closed the balcony door tightly, and turned off the light. I lay down on the bed, which now felt incredibly spacious and comfortable. Tomorrow was a big day. Tomorrow, the illusion they had built from lies and betrayal would shatter into a million pieces. And I, the true mistress of the house, would sleep very soundly tonight. I woke up that morning to sunlight filtering through the gaps in my bedroom curtains. There was no blaring alarm clock, no panic about preparing breakfast for a man who never even looked me in the eye while he ate, and no more anxiety about what lies I would hear today. I opened my eyes slowly, stretching my body on the mattress that felt much larger and more comfortable than usual. I had slept so soundly. There were no tears, no regrets, not even a hint of longing. All that remained in my chest was an incredibly cold calm and a thrilling sense of anticipation. Today was the day of reckoning. The day the mask of greatness my husband had worn for so long would be ripped off, revealing his true face riddled with sores and rot. I stepped out of bed and put on a silk robe that I had always kept at the very back of the closet because my husband once commented that the fabric was too extra to be worn around the house. To hell with his opinion now. I walked to the kitchen, brewed a cup of warm chamomile tea, and made toast with my favorite strawberry jam. I ate my breakfast slowly at the empty dining table. The house felt so peaceful. An image of the 3 a.m. photo from my best friend flashed through my mind. But instead of feeling hurt, I smiled in amusement. That poor woman. She truly thought she had captured a golden trophy, not knowing that the trophy was just a piece of junk coated in deadly poison. After finishing breakfast, I took my teacup upstairs to my secret office. I scanned my fingerprint and retina, let the steel door slide open, and sat in my large chair. The 3 curved monitors in front of me immediately lit up, displaying streams of security code and moving data graphs. As the person who built the company's entire tech infrastructure from scratch, I had access to places that not even our cybersecurity department knew about. And of course, that included full access to every electronic device my husband used. Back when our company was just starting to grow, I secretly installed a backdoor program on my husband's phone and laptop. Initially, I did it purely to protect him from industrial espionage and hackers, considering he was the public face of our innovation. But over time, as his attitude began to change and he started coming home late with various unbelievable excuses, the program's function shifted. It became my eyes and ears. I never used it to track his petty affairs because I had turned a blind eye for the sake of our marriage. But today that program would be my front row seat to a truly epic downfall. I typed a few lines of command into my computer's terminal, remotely activating the microphone on David's phone. Given the time difference on the continent where they were, the sun must have been high in the sky. They should be awake and ready to start their luxurious vacation. A few seconds later, a soft, static sound came from the speakers in my office, followed by the rustling of sheets and the sound of classical music playing softly in the background. "Darling, wake up. The view from the suite's balcony is absolutely beautiful." I heard Jessica's voice. Her tone was sickeningly sweet and contrived. I could picture her standing on the balcony in a hotel robe, holding a glass of orange juice, feeling like the queen of the world. A lazy groan from my husband followed. Then the sound of heavy footsteps approaching the microphone. "This view is nothing compared to your beauty this morning," David replied with the kind of cheesy line that always worked on foolish women. Jessica's melodic laugh followed. "So, are we still going shopping today? You promised to buy me the latest handbag from the designer boutique downtown. My friends at the club will be green with envy when they see me with it next week, especially when they find out I bought it straight from Europe with you. Your frumpy wife would probably cry her eyes out if she saw my new collection." I sipped my tea slowly, a cynical smile playing on my lips as my name was mentioned. "Of course, darling. Buy whatever you want. Max out all my cards. Money is no object for a man like me. My company just got a massive injection of funding, and I have full control over everything. My foolish wife doesn't even know how many zeros are in my bank account. She only cares about her recipes and her little garden out back. David replied with an utterly nauseating arrogance. They both laughed together, laughing at my supposed stupidity, laughing at the woman who had built the very fortune they were now boasting about. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers on the desk. Go on, laugh. Laugh while you still can. A few hours passed. Through the audio feed, I followed their journey from the hotel room to a lavish restaurant for breakfast, then ordering a hired limousine to take them to the elite shopping district downtown. David constantly bragged about his future projects, about how he would expand his company and buy a private island. Jessica chimed in with sky-high praises, pumping his ego beyond the limits of sanity. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. I heard the gentle chime of a door, indicating they had entered a high-end luxury boutique. A salesperson's voice greeted them warmly, speaking English, with a thick local accent. Jessica excitedly began picking out various bags, high heels, and silk dresses. She ordered the staff around like royalty, pointing at this and that without even looking at the price tags. David just laughed softly, acting like a very generous, wealthy man. That will be all, sir. Would you like to pay by card or wire transfer? The cashier's voice came through very politely. The total was in the tens of thousands of dollars, a significant sum, even for a CEO. Use my priority credit card, David answered with flair. I heard the sound of a card being swiped. My office was suddenly silent. I held my breath, staring at my monitor, which was directly linked to the banking system. A few seconds passed. Then the cashier's voice, now slightly hesitant. I'm sorry, sir, but it seems your card has been declined. The machine is showing transaction not authorized. Do you have another card? Declined. David's tone changed. There was a hint of surprise, but he quickly covered it with an awkward laugh. My bank probably blocked it for security reasons since I'm overseas making a large purchase. This happens to priority clients with no spending limit. Let me use the corporate platinum card instead. The sound of a second card being swiped. I grinned. That corporate card had been completely dead since yesterday afternoon when my lawyer executed the license revocation and asset freeze. I am very sorry again, sir, but your second card was also declined. This time the machine is giving an error code that the account cannot be found or has been forcibly frozen, the cashier said, his polite tone beginning to erode, replaced by a subtle suspicion. In a boutique like this, a customer whose cards were repeatedly declined was a huge embarrassment. I could hear Jessica starting to shift uncomfortably. Darling, what's wrong? Why aren't your cards working? All the staff are staring at us. This is so embarrassing. Don't tell me you forgot to inform the bank we were going on vacation. She whispered, her tone suddenly sharp and demanding. Calm down. It must be a stupid banking system error. I'll call my private banker right now and have him fired if he doesn't fix this immediately, David hissed, clearly panicking but still trying to maintain his pride in front of his mistress. I heard the beeps as David tried to make an international call to his banker's number. The call was answered, and David immediately snapped, Hello, it's me. Why are all my credit cards blocked? I'm in a luxury boutique overseas, and you're making me look like a fool. Unblock them now. The banker's voice on the other end was faint but clear enough for the hacked microphone to pick up. I apologize, sir, but this block is not a system error and is not under our authority. All of your personal accounts, including deposits, credit cards, and your collateral assets were officially frozen this morning by court order and the financial authorities. We received a notice that your company's entity has had its license revoked, and there is an incoming report regarding loan defaults and indications of massive embezzlement linked to your personal guarantee. A total silence fell, both on the other end and in my office. But the silence in my room was one filled with triumph. The silence over there was one that suffocated. A court order embezzlement license revoked. What nonsense is this? I'm the CEO. No one can touch my company. Who dares to report me? David's voice trembled violently. Real panic was finally creeping into his voice. The fear was palpable. It was as if he had just been doused with ice water in the middle of winter. "I suggest you return home immediately and contact your lawyer, sir. Your situation is currently critical. Our bank will also be forced to seize your house and car tomorrow morning in accordance with the debt guarantee agreement you signed. Good day." The banker concluded without a hint of sympathy. The call disconnected. David's breathing was heavy and ragged through the audio feed. "What is it, darling? What did he say? Why is your face so pale?" Jessica asked, her voice now filled with contagious panic. "What about my bags?" "I'm not leaving this boutique empty-handed. They'll laugh at me. Just use cash." "I don't have that much cash on me." David answered weakly, almost a whisper. "My cards are frozen. All my money is on hold. My company, something is wrong with my company." "What do you mean frozen? You're a CEO, a rich man. You said money was no object. Then who's going to pay for our 5-star hotel bill? Who's paying for the limousine waiting outside?" Jessica's voice rose, forgetting all the elegant composure she always maintained. Her true nature as a selfish, materialistic woman finally exploded. "I don't care. Fix your problem now, or I'll pay for these things with my own card, but you'll have to pay me back double when we get home." I heard Jessica snort, and then hand her own card to the cashier to pay for her purchases. Payment was successful. David just stood there mute, his pride shattered into a million pieces on the floor of that luxury boutique. There was nothing left of the arrogant man who just this morning had promised to buy a private island. I turned off the monitor displaying the banking data and leaned my head back, closing my eyes. A satisfied smile was etched clearly on my face. This was just the beginning. The storm had only just touched their toes. I opened my eyes again and continued to listen to this very entertaining show. This devastating morning was a masterpiece I had prepared with meticulous care. Afternoon crawled into evening in the city where my husband and best friend were. Back at my home, night was slowly beginning to fall again. I was still sitting silently in my secret office, as if glued to my leather chair, unwilling to miss a single second of the live broadcast of their downfall. My cup of tea had long gone cold, but the blood in my veins was hot and coursing with vigor. Through the still active audio tap on David's phone, I could hear every shift in the atmosphere between them. The air, once filled with sweet nothings and false promises, had turned tense, cold, and thick with hostility. After the humiliating incident at the luxury boutique, they decided to return to the hotel immediately. The entire ride back in the hired limousine, which now felt like an iron cage, was silent. All that could be heard was the anxious tapping of Jessica's fingers on the leather armrest and David's endless heavy sighs. David had spent hours trying to contact every business contact he had. He called the CFO, the COO, even some investors. But the results were all the same. Their numbers were disconnected. They had blocked him, or their assistants answered coldly, stating they no longer had any business relationship with him. My lawyer, Mr. Harrison, had done his job perfectly and cleanly. In less than 24 hours, he had distributed legal notices throughout our entire network of partners, announcing that David had been dishonorably discharged due to indications of massive fraud and that the entity he led was now just an empty shell under investigation by the authorities. David was completely isolated. No life rafts were thrown, no safety lines extended. He was drowning alone in the sea of debt he had created. I heard the hotel room door open and slammed shut from the inside. "Explain yourself to me right now." Jessica screamed, her voice shrill and sharp, bouncing off the walls of their luxury suite. "You've been glued to your phone like a madman the whole way back, and you won't tell me a thing. What does it mean your accounts are frozen? What does it mean you have no money? This vacation is costing tens of thousands of dollars, and the hotel bill isn't even fully paid, not to mention that car rental. Are you expecting me to cover it all? Be quiet, stop screaming, my head is about to explode." David shot back with a roar that was just as loud, his voice hoarse and desperate. "I don't understand what's happening either. Someone must have sabotaged me from inside the company. All my access is cut off. The company accounts are empty. And what's crazier, the bank is talking about legal action over a personal loan that wasn't supposed to be due now. A personal loan." Jessica's tone changed instantly from angry to deeply suspicious. What loan? Aren't you a successful CEO? Isn't your stupid app worth billions? Why would you need to take out a personal loan? A moment of silence. I could picture David standing in the middle of the room, rubbing his face roughly. A face that must now be pale and slick with cold sweat. He was finally realizing that the web of lies he had so carefully constructed had collapsed on top of him. I made some independent investments using company funds a few months ago, crypto and real estate projects. I was sure they would be huge, but the market crashed and the money disappeared. David finally confessed, his voice trembling with fear. To cover the hole so the board wouldn't find out, I had to borrow money from a third party, a private one, and they demanded a guarantee in my personal name. I was supposed to have 2 years to pay it back, but somehow the agreement was leaked. My company's license was revoked unilaterally, and now they're demanding full payment right now. The money the debt is in, the tens of millions of dollars. I'm ruined. I have nothing left. A loud thud. Jessica must have just dropped her expensive shopping bags. You're bankrupt. Jessica's voice was now barely a choked whisper. You're not a tycoon. You embezzled company funds, borrowed from loan sharks, and made yourself the fall guy. And you brought me here, promised me a luxury vacation and designer goods when you're just a poor man with tens of millions in debt. Listen to me, darling, please. David started to beg, a sob catching in his voice. The arrogant man who the night before looked down on his own wife was now whimpering like a child who had lost his toy. This is just temporary, my wife. Yes, my wife. She doesn't know anything about finances. If I can just reach her, I can tell her to sell our house or liquidate her personal savings. She'll help me. She loves me that much. You have money, right? Please lend me some to hire a great lawyer here so I can go back and fix everything. Please. Hearing my name mentioned as his way out made my stomach churn with nausea. How disgusting this man was. After cheating on me, sleeping in a hotel bed with my best friend, berating me and letting his mistress insult me, he now expected the wife he deemed weak and foolish to sacrifice everything to save him. Unfortunately for him, his foolish wife was the one who had tied the noose around his neck and kicked the chair out from under him. You're insane, Jessica hissed, her tone freezing cold. There was no trace of affection or fake love left in her voice. Only the survival instinct of a parasite, realizing its host was dead. You're asking me to pay off your multi-million-dollar debt. You're dreaming. I was with you because I thought you were successful. You think I want to be stuck with a loser like you? I have nothing to do with your embezzlement. I'm packing my bags and finding a flight home right now. You can solve your own problems. The sound of a zipper being pulled harshly. Jessica was preparing to flee. She ignored David's whimpers as he continued to beg and apologize. Their affair, built on a foundation of materialism, proved to be incredibly fragile, shattering to pieces at the first gust of financial crisis. But the drama hadn't reached its peak yet. I glanced at my monitor displaying David's GPS location. At that exact moment, my private phone on the desk vibrated. A short text message from my lawyer came in. It consisted of a single short sentence. Local Interpol team has just entered the hotel lobby. I leaned forward, turning the speaker volume up to maximum. My heart beat with a steady, strong rhythm. This was it. A loud booming knock echoed from the microphone. It was so forceful and authoritative, clearly not a knock from room service. The knock was followed by a man's deep voice shouting in English, "Police, open the door! We have an international warrant for your arrest." A choked scream escaped Jessica's mouth. "Police? You brought the police here! What have you done, you idiot?" she shrieked hysterically. I don't know. David sounded completely panicked. I heard shuffling footsteps, then the sound of an electronic lock disengaging. The hotel room door swung wide open. A series of heavy footsteps from combat boots entered the room. The atmosphere instantly turned chaotic. "Are you the individual matching this identity?" a police officer asked, his voice firm and cold, completely unfazed by the luxury of the hotel room. Yes, that's me. What's the problem, officer? I'm a foreign citizen. I'm here on vacation. David replied, his voice trembling violently. You are under arrest based on a warrant issued by the police in your home country, coordinated with international law enforcement authorities. You are accused of high-level corporate fraud, embezzlement of investor funds exceeding $100 million, and forgery of banking documents. We also received a report from immigration that you are a flight risk due to outstanding personal debts that have come due. The officer stated quickly and bluntly, reading David his rights and charges like a death sentence. 100 million. This time, Jessica's scream was a full-blown piercing shriek. That number was far beyond what she had imagined. It wasn't a debt that could be paid off by selling luxury handbags. It was a debt that guaranteed David would rot in prison for a very, very long time. No. This must be a misunderstanding. I'm the CEO. I'm a victim of a conspiracy. You can't just arrest me like this, David screamed hysterically. There was a sound of a small struggle followed by a body hitting the wall. Please cooperate, sir, or we will be forced to use force. Turn around and place your hands behind your back, the officer commanded menacingly. Then the distinct metallic click of handcuffs being fastened. Darling, help me, David cried out desperately to Jessica. Please call my lawyer. Call my wife at home. Tell her to sell whatever assets she can. Help me. I heard Jessica's footsteps backing away, followed by her trembling voice filled with selfish panic. Don't call me darling. I don't know this man. Officer, I swear. We just met a few days ago. I know nothing about his business or his debts. I'm just a tourist who happened to be with him. Please don't drag me into this. I have a reputation to protect. Even in a moment like this, she was still thinking about her socialite reputation. How disgusting. Her blatant denial was the final blow that shattered David's soul. Betrayal repaid with betrayal. The man who threw away a loyal wife for a trophy woman was now being thrown away by that same trophy woman the moment the trophy proved to be fake. Take him away, the commanding officer ordered, the sound of shuffling feet. David was crying, wailing a pathetic sight for a man who had been so arrogant. He kept screaming my name and Jessica's name, begging for help that would never come. His voice grew more distant and then disappeared behind the closed hotel room door. All that was left in that hotel room was the sound of Jessica's sobs, all alone, surrounded by luxury goods that couldn't pay her way back home. I smiled widely in my dark office. I pressed a button, turning off the audio tape forever. The first act of the show was over with a very satisfying conclusion. My husband was no longer a successful tycoon, adored by the media. Tonight, he was officially sleeping on the concrete floor of a foreign prison, a broke and bankrupt fugitive. The score was settled with him, but my business with my best friend was not yet finished. I stared at my phone, waiting for a call that I knew would come very soon. The night crawled by with excruciating slowness, yet every second brought an indescribable satisfaction to my chest. After deactivating the spy program on David's phone, I decided to leave my secret office. I walked down the stairs of the luxurious house that now felt entirely mine, no longer the golden cage where I served a treacherous man. The house was so quiet, only the ticking of the large grandfather clock in the living room could be heard, as if counting down the destruction of the people who had underestimated me. I walked to the kitchen, brewed a cup of hot tea, and sat alone at the dining table. My mind wandered far back, unraveling the threads of my friendship with the woman who had just watched her illicit lover be dragged away by international police. Back in our early college days, we were two young women with our own dreams. I was always the student who preferred spending time in the library, engrossed in programming books and complex lines of code. Jessica, meanwhile, was my complete opposite. She was always the center of attention, thrived on others' praise, and measured a person's worth by the brand of their clothes. My mother had always advised me to choose my friends wisely, but I was too naive back then. I thought Jessica's arrogant and materialistic behavior was just a phase, a mask, to cover her own insecurities. But as time went on, her true nature became more pronounced, especially after I married a man who slowly climbed the ladder to become a successful CEO. Every time Jessica visited this house, her eyes would scan every corner with a judgmental gaze. She would comment on my furniture, which she deemed not luxurious enough, criticize my way of dressing as too country for the wife of a rich man, and always show off her latest designer items with a condescending tone. I let it all happen. I swallowed every insult and insinuation with a gentle smile, playing my role as a simple woman who understood nothing of the glittering world of socialites. I let her feel victorious, let her feel superior, because I knew that true power never screams for recognition. True power works in silence, strategizing behind the scenes and waiting for the right moment to strike back without mercy. And that right moment had arrived. Tonight, I sipped my tea, slowly feeling its warmth spread down my throat. My cell phone lying on the dining table had been blinking with news notifications. I didn't need to open them to know what they said. The news of the arrest of a tech CEO from our country in a luxury hotel abroad must have already started leaking to the media. The scandal of embezzlement and massive debt that ensnared my husband was a delicious feast for journalists. But that wasn't the news I was waiting for. I was waiting for one specific phone call, a call from a woman who must now be standing on the brink of despair. Time continued to pass until dawn began to break, the morning sun piercing through the curtains and illuminating the room with a golden light. Just as I was about to wash my teacup, my cell phone suddenly rang loudly. The screen displayed a number with a foreign country code, the exact same one where my husband was arrested yesterday. I let the phone ring for a few seconds, savoring the sensation of power coursing through my veins. I deliberately didn't answer it right away. Let her feel the torment of panic. Let her pray in her heart that I would be kind enough to press the green button. On the fifth ring, I finally swiped the screen and put the phone to my ear. I said nothing. I just waited, letting the voice on the other end start the conversation. The sound of heart-wrenching sobs came through, followed by the roar of traffic and the bustle of people passing by. It was the sound of a city street, not the soundproof silence of a five-star hotel room. "Hello? Please don't hang up. It's me. Please, just listen to me." Jessica's voice was trembling, violently desperate and hoarse from crying so much. Gone was the sickeningly sweet tone. Gone was the arrogance of the high society socialite who just the night before had told me to divorce my husband. All that was left was the whimper of a woman who had lost everything in less than 24 hours. "Yes, who is this?" I asked in a flat, ice-cold tone, pretending not to recognize her broken voice. "It's me, your friend. Please help me," she cried out on the other end as if afraid a stranger might overhear. Her crying grew louder, pathetic, and amusing to my ears. "I'm overseas. Everything's a mess. Your husband? He was arrested by the police yesterday afternoon. They took him away in handcuffs. I was left all alone in that hotel room. I didn't know what to do. I hid in the room all night, shaking with fear, hoping it was all just a nightmare. I leaned back in my dining chair, crossing my legs casually. "Oh, really? That's quite shocking. So what does that have to do with me? Weren't you the one who chose to go on vacation with him? Weren't you the one who so proudly showed off your position in his hotel bed last night? I'm sorry. Oh, God, I'm so sorry," she wailed hysterically, realizing I wasn't offering her a shred of sympathy. "I was a fool. I was fooled by that man. He lied to me. He said he was rich. He said he had everything. But this morning the hotel management kicked me out. They said our room bill, which was tens of thousands of dollars, wasn't paid because all of your husband's credit cards were declined. My own credit card was maxed out paying for yesterday's shopping. I don't have a single penny." I listened to her litany of suffering with a cynical smile spreading across my lips. This was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. "So why are you calling me? Are you expecting me to pay for your romantic getaway? They took my things!" she screamed in desperation, ignoring my sarcasm. "The hotel manager called security. They went through my suitcase in the middle of the crowded lobby. They confiscated all my designer bags, my jewelry, my watch, even the expensive clothes I just bought yesterday. They're holding them as collateral because I couldn't pay the rest of the bill. They dragged me out of the main entrance like a beggar. Everyone was staring at me. I was publicly humiliated. Now I'm alone on the side of a highway. I'm cold, I'm hungry, and I had to borrow a phone from a small coffee shop owner because they confiscated my phone too. Help me, please." I pictured the scene in my head. A woman who had always worshipped appearance and social status, who had always looked down on simple people, now standing on the sidewalk of a foreign country, with her makeup streaked by tears, without a luxury bag in her hand, without sparkling jewelry on her neck, kicked out like a common criminal from the very hotel that had been the stage for her affair. Karma had worked in a very poetic and merciless way. She had been stripped of all her illusions of wealth, forced to face the reality that she was worth nothing without the branded goods she always flaunted. "That is the consequence of your own choices," I replied, my voice calm and emotionless. "You chose to chase instant luxury by stealing from someone else. You chose to throw away your dignity for a first-class ticket and the false promises of a man who couldn't even manage his own finances. Why should I feel sorry for you? We've been friends for a long time. Remember our college days. Remember how we always ate together in the cafeteria. I know I've been awful to you. I know I was jealous of your simplicity and your peace, but please just forget all that for now." She tried to play the empathy card, pleading in the name of a past that meant nothing to me. "Just buy me one plane ticket home. Economy class is fine. Please just transfer a little money to this coffee shop owner's account so I can take a taxi to the airport. I promise I'll pay you back everything once I'm home. I promise I'll never bother you again. I'll get on my knees and apologize to you in person. Please save me from this hell." I paused for a moment, letting the silence hang in the air. I could hear her ragged, hopeful breaths as she waited for my decision. I knew that with a single click on my banking app, I could send her the money she asked for without making it a dent in my fortune. To me, the price of a plane ticket was nothing. But letting this snake of a woman return home and continue her life as if nothing had happened would be an insult to the pain she had caused me. She had to learn that every action has a steep price, and unfortunately for her, this time there was no credit card that could save her. "You're asking me for a ticket home?" I asked slowly, ensuring my intonation was crystal clear to her. "After you deliberately sent me a photo of your affair at 3 a.m. with a message telling me to divorce my husband because you thought you deserved his fortune." "More, I was wrong. I'm so sorry. It was just a moment of arrogance. Please forget that message." She sobbed, realizing that very message had sealed her fate. "I never forget anything," I whispered sharply, cutting off her wails. "I remember your message perfectly. You said my husband preferred you, the woman of means. Therefore, I can only remind you of my reply that night. Aren't you on vacation with the rich man you were so proud of? Just ask him for a ticket home. Enjoy what's left of the fortune you boasted about together over there. Don't ever contact me again." "No, wait. Please don't hang." Click. I pressed the red end call button on my phone screen, severing the connection unilaterally and forever. Her pathetic cries instantly vanished, replaced by the calming silence of my dining room. I immediately blocked the foreign number so she couldn't try to contact me again. My hand didn't tremble in the slightest. My heart felt no pity. I just felt an immense sense of relief, as if a malignant tumor that had been growing in my life had finally been removed, roots and all. That woman was now trapped in a foreign country without money, without a valuable identity, and without shelter. She would have to face the harsh reality, perhaps dealing with local authorities, or seeking help from the embassy with the status of a destitute vagrant. Her socialite reputation back home would be destroyed once this news spread. Her two-faced friends from her social club would be the first to laugh at her behind her back. She had lost everything: her friend, her fake wealth, and her dignity. This psychological revenge felt far more satisfying than any curse or physical slap. I had destroyed her soul with silence and reality. I stood up from the dining table, took a deep breath, and smiled towards the window, which now showed the bright morning sun. Today was a new beginning. The sharp pebbles that had been obstructing my path had been cleared away. Now it was time for me to take off this mask of the simple housewife. Now it was time for me to wear my true crown and step onto the real battlefield to reclaim my kingdom. Dust yourself off, hold your head high, because the real queen is about to enter her throne room. That morning I looked at myself in my bedroom mirror with a completely new feeling. No more plain dresses or pale makeup. I wore a custom-tailored navy blue blazer suit, high heels, and bright red lipstick. My hair was tied in a neat professional bun. The weak, submissive woman was dead. The person standing in front of the mirror now was the true architect. At precisely 9 a.m., a black sedan sent by my lawyer picked me up. Upon arriving at my company's building, I went straight to the executive boardroom on the top floor. Through the glass walls, I could see a dozen executives and investors arguing in a panic. The stock had plummeted, banks were freezing credit lines, and the news of my husband's arrest was widespread. My lawyer stood calmly at the head of the table, trying to quell the chaos. I pushed the double doors open wide. The sound made the entire room fall silent. Their eyes widened as they saw me stride in confidently and take the head seat, the one my husband used to occupy. "Good morning," I said flatly, my voice echoing sharply. "Forget the simple woman you knew as your director's wife. Today, I am here in a very different capacity. At my signal, my lawyer distributed legal documents to everyone. As it is written there," I continued, looking at them one by one, "I am the lead architect of this application and the absolute 100% shareholder of the parent company. The man you have been calling your director was merely a figurehead I paid to be the public face, and because his greed nearly destroyed us, I have disposed of him." I leaned forward. "The tens of millions in debt are purely under his personal name. This company is secure, clean, and all assets are intact under my direct control. As of this moment, I am taking over as Chief Executive Officer. If anyone doubts my capabilities, the door is open. If you wish to stay, be prepared to work under a new standard." Not a single person moved. They nodded obediently, bowing their heads in respect to the true leader. Several weeks passed since that historic meeting. The company stabilized, and under my leadership, the stock soared to new heights. This afternoon, I stood in my spacious office looking out at the city skyline from behind the massive glass window. On the television in the corner, a news report showed my husband in an orange prison jumpsuit. He was hunched over, dejected, as he was led into a police vehicle, preparing to face a sentence of over a decade in prison for fraud and embezzlement. His luxury home had been seized by the bank. Meanwhile, the news about my best friend was just as pathetic. After becoming homeless and unable to pay the fines for overstaying her visa, she was forcibly deported. She returned home with nothing, becoming the laughingstock of her socialite friends and losing all of her fake social status. Now she had to return to the impoverished life she had always scorned. I sipped my warm tea, smiling as I watched the beautiful sunset. I had not only taken out the trash from my life, but I had also cleaned up and reclaimed my kingdom whole and entire.